I sat in the driver's seat of my own SUV, watching my daughter laugh over a plate of artisanal pasta while I ate a stale peppermint I found in the bottom of my purse. The afternoon sun was beating down on the windshield, turning the inside of the car into a slow cooker. I cracked the windows, but the thick summer air offered zero relief. Through the large glass windows of the upscale Italian restaurant, I had a perfect view of their table. My daughter Sarah, her husband Greg, and Greg's parents were seated comfortably clinking wine glasses and passing around baskets of warm bread. They had invited me to join them for a family lunch. Because Greg's car was in the shop, I drove all 5 of us in my spacious vehicle. But when we arrived at the hostess stand, there was a sudden issue. The reservation was only for 4. Instead of waiting for a larger table or going somewhere else, Sarah turned to me with a dismissive wave of her hand. She told me they would just be a quick 45 minutes and suggested I wait in the car so I wouldn't have to stand in the crowded lobby. Like a fool, I agreed. I wanted to keep the peace. 1 hour passed. Then an hour and a half. I watched the waiter bring out massive dessert platters. They were taking pictures, leaning in close, completely unbothered by the fact that a 65-year-old woman was baking in the parking lot. They didn't forget me. They just didn't care. I realized in that quiet, suffocating moment that I was nothing more than a free chauffeur to them, a convenient tool to be used and discarded when I took up too much space. My hands gripped the steering wheel, but I wasn't shaking with rage. I just felt incredibly clear. I didn't cry. I didn't march inside and cause a scene. I reached forward, turned the key in the ignition, and put the car in drive. I pulled out of the parking lot, leaving them right where they were. I didn't drive back to my own place. Instead, I drove straight to their house in the suburbs. Well, technically, it was my house. I bought the 3-bedroom property 5 years ago as an investment and let Sarah and Greg move in rent-free to help them get on their feet. 5 years later, they were still finding their footing, taking multiple vacations a year, while I quietly covered the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance, and all of the major utility bills. I parked in the driveway, unlocked the front door, and walked inside. The house was a mess. Expensive clothes were thrown over the chairs, and a massive new gaming console sat proudly in the center of the living room. They always had money for luxuries, just never for necessities. I walked straight to the kitchen island. Sitting right next to the fruit bowl was the emergency credit card I had given Sarah years ago. It was supposed to be for medical emergencies or car repairs. I knew for a fact she used it for premium coffee and online shopping. I picked up the plastic card and slid it into my pocket. Next, I walked over to the hallway console table and grabbed the spare key to my SUV and the spare key to my own home. There was no dramatic music playing in the background. I was simply severing the lifelines I had freely offered to people who treated me with profound disrespect. Before leaving, I walked over to the premium internet router tucked in the corner of the room. I paid that bill every month so Greg could stream his games without lag. I reached down, unplugged it from the wall, and took the power cord. I locked the door behind me and walked back to my car. My heart beat at a normal, steady pace. For the first time in years, I wasn't making excuses for my daughter's behavior. I was finally holding her accountable. As I pulled out of the neighborhood, my phone screen lit up on the dashboard. Sarah was calling. I let it ring 3 times before tapping the answer button on the steering wheel. I kept my eyes on the road, waiting for her to speak. "Mom, where are you? We just walked out and the car is gone," Sarah demanded. Her voice held zero concern, only heavy annoyance. She sounded like a manager reprimanding an employee who had taken too long on a lunch break. "I went home," I replied smoothly. The car was getting too hot, and 2 hours is a long time to wait for a 45-minute lunch. There was a stunned silence on the other end. "You just left us here. Are you serious? Greg's parents are standing right next to me. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? You need to turn around right now and come pick us up. I won't be doing that, I stated. You have phones. You can figure out a ride. Enjoy your afternoon. I tapped the screen to end the call. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't hurl insults. I just removed my availability. 10 minutes later, as I was pulling into my own garage, my phone buzzed with an automated text alert from my bank. Attempted charge of $85,000 for premium rideshare declined. I smiled slightly as I walked into my quiet, cool kitchen. I had logged into my banking app while sitting at a red light and locked that emergency credit card. They were going to have to use their own money to get home. About an hour later, my phone blew up with a long string of texts from Greg. He called me petty and unreasonable, claiming they had simply lost track of time and that I was tearing the family apart over a minor misunderstanding. He demanded I unlock the credit card immediately because they had to take a dirty city bus home. I read the message, turned my phone on silent, and went to the back patio to water my plants. They were about to learn exactly how much I did for them. The next morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, enjoying a fresh cup of coffee, when heavy footsteps pounded up my front porch. Through the window, I saw Sarah and Greg marching toward the door. They looked furious. I took a slow sip of my coffee, walked over, and unlocked the deadbolt. I didn't open the door all the way, just enough to look at them. "We need to talk," Greg barked, stepping forward as if he owned the place. "You humiliated us yesterday, and you took the internet cord. What kind of childish game is this?" "It's not a game," I answered, leaning against the door frame. "You left me in a hot car for 2 hours while you ate a luxury meal. I realized I've been making things far too comfortable for people who don't respect me." Sarah pushed past Greg, glaring at me. "Mom, you are completely overreacting. His parents wanted privacy to discuss their retirement. We couldn't just drag you to the table. You're acting like a victim." "I'm not a victim, Sarah," I replied evenly. "Victims are helpless. I am simply a property owner making some overdue changes." I looked directly into my daughter's eyes. "Starting next month, you will be paying the market rate for rent. I will no longer cover your utilities. You have 30 days to transfer the electric and water into your names. If you don't want to pay, you have 30 days to pack your things and find another place." Greg laughed out loud, shaking his head. "You've got to be kidding. You're trying to evict your own daughter over a plate of pasta." "I'm establishing boundaries," I corrected him. "You've had a free ride for 5 years. That ride ended yesterday in the restaurant parking lot." I closed the door in their faces and locked the deadbolt. I didn't wait to hear their muffled shouts from the porch. I walked back to my coffee, feeling lighter than I had in a decade. I didn't wait for them to calm down or try to negotiate. I knew exactly how my daughter operated. She would wait a few days, assume I was making empty threats born out of anger, and then go right back to her normal routine. Not this time. I spent the afternoon at my computer, untangling my finances from theirs. I logged into the utility company portals and scheduled a shutoff for the electric and water services at their address, effective in exactly 30 days. The prompt on the screen warned me that the services would be disconnected if a new responsible party didn't take over the account. I clicked confirm without hesitating. Next, I opened my auto insurance portal. Sarah and Greg had been listed as secondary drivers on my policy for years, receiving a massive discount because of my clean driving record and bundled home insurance. I selected their names, clicked Remove Driver, and watched my monthly premium drop by over $100. I didn't need to call a lawyer or file complicated paperwork to change the dynamic. I just had to stop holding the safety net. Later that evening, I gathered the emergency credit card, the spare keys to their house, and all the receipts from the bills I had paid for them over the last year. I put them in a neat pile on my desk. Seeing it all laid out in front of me was a harsh reality check. I had funded their entitlement. I had taught them that my boundaries were flexible and my wallet was always open. My phone stayed quiet that night. No apologies, no attempts to make things right. They were probably sitting in their living room, using their phone data, convincing each other that I would cave by the end of the week. I turned off my computer, went up to my bedroom, and slept incredibly well. 3 days later, my best friend Martha came over for our weekly lunch. Martha was a retired school principal, a woman who suffered no fools and always spoke her mind. I set down 2 plates of chicken salad sandwiches and poured us iced tea, explaining exactly what had happened at the restaurant and the steps I had taken since. Martha listened quietly, chewing her food and nodding. "It's about time, Megan," she finally stated, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "I've watched that girl treat you like an unpaid assistant for years. You've been entirely too soft on them." "I just didn't want to lose my relationship with my daughter," I admitted, tracing the rim of my glass. "I thought if I made her life easier, she would eventually appreciate it." Martha sighed, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "People don't appreciate what they don't have to work for. You gave them a house and they treated you like the help. Taking away the money is the only language they understand." Just as she said that, my cell phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Sarah Hay. "Greg got pulled over for a busted taillight and the cop said, 'Our insurance is invalid. Did you cancel our policy without telling us?'" I read the text out loud to Martha. She chuckled. "Tell her you gave her 30 days for the house, but the car insurance was a privilege that expired at the Italian restaurant." I didn't reply to the text at all. I just set the phone face down. Sarah knew how to buy premium car insurance just as well as she knew how to buy expensive handbags. She didn't need my help. She just wanted my money. "You're doing the right thing," Martha assured me, finishing her tea. "Stand your ground. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but you have to hold the line." 2 weeks into the 30-day notice, Sarah showed up at my house unannounced. This time, she came alone. She didn't march to the door. She walked slowly, her shoulders slumped. When I let her in, she immediately sat at the kitchen table and buried her face in her hands. "Mom, I am so stressed out," she began, her voice shaking. "Greg's hours got cut at work and we can't find a decent auto insurance policy that doesn't cost a fortune. The utility companies are demanding massive deposits to start service in our names. We literally don't have the cash." She looked up at me, tears spilling over her eyelashes. A year ago, this display would have broken my heart. I would have instantly written her a check and told her not to worry. But today, I just watched her. I observed the way she paused, waiting for my reaction. It was a performance. "I'm sorry, things are stressful," I replied calmly, keeping my hands folded in my lap. "Transitioning to financial independence can be a challenge." Sarah blinked, the tears stopping abruptly. "Transitioning, Mom? We are drowning. Are you really going to sit there and watch us struggle over a stupid lunch?" I said. "I was sorry." "You didn't say you were sorry," I pointed out. "You demanded I fix a problem you created. If you are short on cash, I suggest you return the new gaming console in your living room, or perhaps pick up a second job on the weekends. You have 2 weeks left before rent is due." The sadness vanished from her face, replaced instantly by cold anger. She stood up, knocking her chair back. "You are completely heartless. You have plenty of money. You're just punishing us because you want to control my life." "I don't want to control your life, Sarah," I answered softly. "I just refuse to fund it anymore." She stormed out, slamming the front door so hard the framed pictures in the hallway rattled. On day 28, I printed out a standard, legally binding residential lease agreement from the internet. I didn't need a lawyer to draft a complicated document. A basic state template worked perfectly. I filled in the market rate for the property, set the security deposit rules, and highlighted the lines where they needed to sign. I drove over to the house at noon. Greg's car was in the driveway. I knocked firmly. Greg opened the door, looking disheveled in sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. He scowled when he saw me. "Sarah's not here," he muttered, trying to close the door. I held up my hand, stopping the door. "I'm not here to socialize. Here is the lease agreement for next month." I handed him the manila envelope. "Rent is due on the 1st. If I do not have a signed copy and a cashier's check by Friday at 5:00 p.m., I expect you to be fully vacated by Sunday morning." Greg looked at the envelope like it was a live grenade. "You can't just kick us out. We have rights. We've lived here for 5 years. You have lived here as my guests," I corrected him. "You have no lease, no equity, and no legal claim to this property. If you choose not to sign the agreement, I will bring a property manager over on Sunday to inspect the house and change the locks. It's entirely your choice." "We can't afford this rent," Greg yelled, his face turning red. "You're ruining our lives." "Then you should start packing," I replied smoothly. "And make sure you clean the oven before you leave. I'll be checking." I turned around and walked back to my car. I didn't engage in a screaming match. I didn't let him drag me into an argument about family obligations. I gave him the terms, clear and simple. The control was entirely in my hands, and for the first time, he realized he couldn't intimidate his way out of it. Friday at 5:00 p.m. came and went. No signed lease, no cashier's check, and no phone call. I wasn't surprised. Sarah and Greg would rather inconvenience themselves than admit defeat and play by my rules. On Sunday morning at exactly 9:10 a.m., I pulled into the driveway. I wasn't alone. I had hired a local property manager, a no-nonsense woman named Diane, to handle the walkthrough and manage the future rental of the house. I also brought a local locksmith. When we walked up to the house, the front door was propped open. The living room was filled with cardboard boxes and trash bags. Sarah and Greg were frantically carrying things out to a rented moving truck parked on the street. Greg's parents were there too, helping them carry smaller boxes. They all stopped and stared when I walked in with Diane and the locksmith. "You actually brought someone to change the locks?" Sarah asked, her voice cracking. She looked exhausted, her hair tied in a messy knot. "I told you the terms," I stated simply. I didn't gloat. I didn't offer to help them lift a single box. I just stood out of the way with Diane while the locksmith went to work on the front door. Greg's mother glared at me as she carried a lamp past us. "Family doesn't do this to each other," she whispered fiercely. I looked her right in the eye. Family doesn't leave their mother in a sweltering car for 2 hours while they eat a luxury lunch. Good luck with the move. By noon, the truck was loaded. Sarah stood at the end of the driveway, looking back at the beautiful house she had lived in for free for 5 years. She looked at me expecting a last-minute reprieve, expecting me to crack. I just gave her a polite nod. She climbed into the truck and they drove away. 6 months passed. The house on Maple Street was quickly rented out to a lovely young couple who paid their rent on time and took excellent care of the lawn. The extra income padded my retirement account, beautifully allowing me to finally book that river cruise through Europe I had always talked about. My daily life changed drastically. Without the constant financial drain and the emotional weight of Sarah's entitlement, I felt 10 years younger. I spent my days gardening, volunteering at the local library, and enjoying quiet lunches with Martha. Sarah and Greg moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment across town. I didn't reach out to them. I let the silence do the work. Eventually, Sarah sent a text. Just a simple, "Can we get coffee?" We met at a small cafe halfway between our homes. She looked older, more grounded. She didn't bring up the house, and she didn't ask for money. She told me she had taken a job as a receptionist at a dental office to help cover their new bills. "It's hard," she admitted, looking down at her cup. "Having to budget for everything." "It is," I agreed gently. But it builds character. She didn't argue. She didn't throw a tantrum. For the first time in her adult life, she looked at me not as an ATM, but as a person. When the bill came, she reached into her purse, pulled out her own debit card, and paid for her coffee. We weren't best friends. The trust between us was still broken, and it would take years to rebuild. But a new foundation had been laid. I walked out of the cafe, got into my SUV, and drove home to my peaceful, quiet house. I was no longer a victim in my own life. I was finally in the driver's seat.